Hello, everyone. So, Sandy Munro has started a podcast and they posted their first episode, and he interviewed the CEO of Polestar. The CEO, his name is Thomas Ingenlath. And there are some interesting insights there. I'll just highlight a few and play some clips from the podcast. So let's check it out. The first one here is regarding engineers, and it's something I have often quoted. And interesting to see Sandy ask a CEO of a new fully electric vehicle company this question, as it's something that I have always said to many people many times.
Okay, so I was an engine engineer. That was my job at Ford when I was working there, and until I went to finance staff. I don't know how that happened, but anyways, but at the end of the day, very little of what I learned as an engine engineer is transferable to electric drive systems. You know, a transmission is really complicated, lots of bits and pieces. The gearbox that you have in an electric car is very, very, very simple. So like, what do you do with some of the folks where their knowledge is not relevant anymore? How are you working with that? Do you do retraining, or is it, so long, have a nice day, or what are you guys doing?
I mean, the great thing about human mankind is the capability of actually switching and learning.
Yes.
I mean, curiosity and just using, the brain is still valid. The brain that you used to do, and the creativity, certain ways of innovation, thinking. So just simply dedicate your life now to the new thing. Mm-hmm. It was, and funnily enough, that is what actually keeps people on their toes, and maybe even gets them out of a rather dull place after having done for 20 years the same thing, to actually get onto the new stuff. That's amazing. It takes a little while, but surprisingly a much shorter time that you would expect that they get fully fire onto the new thing. That I think is absolutely possible. It's just really, like I said before, it needs that very clear direction. Say, look, this is what we concentrate now on.
So interesting response there from the CEO of Polestar. He admits that there's a lag that will happen. Like, it's not the skills that an engine engineer has, an internal combustion engine engineer, switching to a fully electric vehicle motor. If they choose to make the switch, I'm sure that they could be a good engineer to design and improve electric motors, but there will be some kind of lag. And this is something that I highlighted because the media seem to suggest that no, this switch is like overnight. Once traditional automotive decides that they're going to make electric vehicles, they're going to snap their fingers and they'll be pumping out electric vehicles, no problem. They know how to make cars, and it's easy. Well, that's not the case, and he had a good answer to Stanley's question, but he did, say that it takes time. They're not going to just. I'm sure there's some genius engineers out there who, very quickly will transfer the knowledge and pick up on the new thing. But I don't think it's as easy as the media seemed to suggest it was, when they kept saying, and some people are still saying, that once traditional automotive gets into electric vehicle production, they're just gonna steamroller over Tesla. I don't think that's the case. And now they get into the future outlook, and Thomas's answer is quite interesting here. So let's have a look what he has to say about the future for Polestar.
The biggest thing for me is I'm looking at there's much less in the way of complication from a mechanical standpoint, and a tremendous amount of extra complications when you start looking at the electronics and whatnot.
That was where I would have been gone now, because that indeed is a new thing. Funnily enough, even the ice train cars, electronic-wise, got already into such a Hercules task. But now that is really the field where car industry definitely has to transform into something much more software-oriented. That's certainly where, when we talked about before about electric engines and stuff, in a way that's still, despite the fact that it's a new field, it's still a technology which is somehow in the scope of what automotive engineers are kind of used to do. But software, and really software engineering and that thinking, that of course is a completely different world.
Yeah, well, that's, we found out, or actually some of our customers have found out the hard way that not every software engineer is adaptable to the type of software that a car or an airplane is capable of needing. Not capable, but absolutely needs. So there's a big sieve of sifting, trying to get the right people to do the right things. It's a transitional area that I think is going to be painful for some, and for others, I think they're just going to dive in and they'll have no problems with it. But what do you see as the future? Like we've talked about when we walked around. I said that Tesla has gone from wound electric motors now to hairpin motors. Excellent idea. But then we started tearing apart the Lucid electric motor, and the Lucid gearbox is like nothing I've ever seen ever for the type of power and whatever. This is just like mind-blowing, the difference. What do you think is beyond that? Where do you think we're going to be going in the distant future? Not just next week or next month, but maybe by the time we get to 2030, where do you think we're going to be looking at as far as the percentage of electric vehicles? What new techniques are sitting out there? Where do you see the future going?
Well, certain elements will be very much dictated by maturing this new technology. Getting rid of the permanent magnets in the electric engines definitely is a big task ahead, but doable, very beneficial. And then clearly, Sandy, the big mega challenge will be each and every engineering point taking into consideration reducing CO2 footprint, getting the burden that there is with CO2 in any produced piece out of the car. We were having a walk and we looked at, showed me the electric battery tray. My immediate question would have been, okay, you might have advantages towards the aluminum case, but the aluminum case, I know I can recycle 100%, no problem to have that in a circular process. How about this plastic? That is where we do a lot of research and work a lot with, of course, partners, suppliers, companies that are on that journey. It is one of the biggest engineering tasks for the next 10 years, how to get the CO2 footprint out of our products.
Yeah, and you've done a fine job. I heard that, or read that your green footprint, or your footprint, is getting a lot greener than everybody else because you've looked at the beginning of the program or at the beginning of the cycle, which ones of these materials or these processes give us the best results with the lowest carbon footprint, not on the vehicle itself, not the emissions that come out of the tailpipe or anything, but how much in the way of emissions. And I can't remember how many tons it was that you reduced.
It's what we call the life cycle assessment, a yearly checkup. Where are we with any car in our production? The Polestar 2, of course, was the first one where we had a full report. And it was 27 tons the first year. That is more than a combustion engine car, yes, but the analysis shows as well, if you then have a use case of, I don't know, 15,000 kilometers per year, after 2.5 years, you're actually in a better position than the ICE train car. And of course, we want to reduce that burden as close as possible to zero, which is of course super difficult. And some of the steps are actually easy. You just simply, where you produce today with, call it now, fossil energy, if you go and have natural water power, hydrogen power, whatever, to produce your batteries, boom, 24% less CO2 burden of the Polestar 3 battery compared to the Polestar 2 battery, just by changing the energy source.
Right.
Many other things become more cumbersome and difficult. But sometimes it's just asking the right question. We very often come to our partners and just asking, hey, how much could we actually, in that new piece, enhance the amount of recycled plastic before it gets difficult in its attributes? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get, oh, you're the first one who is asking that. And I cannot believe it that still is not almost a standard in what you go out as an RFQ to suppliers, that you of course ask for that element. So there are some low-hanging fruits that can already do a big benefit, and we would already benefit if the industry would align on a standard of measuring, which still doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that you have a very clear definition of how we all would report on the CO2 footprint of your product.
So I think it's interesting how he answered that question when Sandy asked him about, where do you see the future of electric vehicles? He seems to go into the most important thing is getting the carbon footprint down to zero. Don't know if I would agree with that. Like, yes, it's an important factor, but as a car company manufacturing electric vehicles, we already know that they're cleaner. So why not? Why wouldn't your goal be to make as many as possible and get them in the hands in as many people as possible? It doesn't. I don't know. The goal just doesn't seem. If that's maybe he just got off track and answered and his mind went down that path of like, oh, we want to. It's one of our big goals to get CO2 down to zero, but it doesn't seem to me like an appropriate answer to Sandy's question for a company that's getting into the electric vehicle game. I'm gonna look up and see. I think Polestars are quite expensive, and they might be just playing. Maybe that's not their goal to bring electric vehicles to everyone. They want to cater to the luxury market, possibly. And if that's the case, yeah, maybe their big goal is, well, we see people with deeper pockets are more concerned about having zero carbon footprint. So that's our number one goal. Maybe that's why he chose that answer. And yeah, one last interesting thing from this interview that I had seen before, but I was reminded about in this interview is the Polestar 4 is not going to have a rear view. It's not going to have a rear window. So I found an article here highlighting this. Headline is the Polestar 4 doesn't have a rear window, but does have a rear view mirror. Legally, Polestar's newest SUV needs a rear view mirror unless you toggle it to show a camera view of what's behind. It just shows the rear seats. So I think that's a cool idea, and Sandy points out in the interview that he's pushing to get rid of rear view mirrors in the States, but has had very little luck so far. Something I think would be cool to see, especially because electric vehicles benefit so much from being more aerodynamic, and the side view mirrors, if you could remove them and just put a little camera, your aerodynamic efficiency would be so much better that it would make a lot of sense. And then you just have a little screen on the inside of the car that would show you the exact same thing that old school actual mirror would show you. So cool to see that the Polestar 4 is going to have this rear view camera that replaces the rear view mirror, and there's going to be no rear window for the car. It's just going to be body panel all the way from the roof down to the back of the car, as you see in this picture here. See, there's no rear window. There's just this raised area that I'm sure houses the rear camera. So yeah, that was an interesting initial podcast from Munro live. I'll put a link if you want to watch the whole thing in the description. My name's Evan Bertrand. This is the Evergreen channel. Please give the video a like if you liked it. It helps with the reach of the video, and subscribe by clicking the wheel if you want to subscribe. And thanks for watching.